the Eagle beyond America. When people hear the words F-15 Eagle, they immediately think of the United States. They think of one of the most successful fighter aircraft ever built, a machine that has dominated the skies for decades, a fighter with an unmatched combat reputation. But what if I told you that one of the largest fleets of F-15s in the world doesn't belong to America? And even more surprising, many of those aircraft were not built in the United States at all. Thousands of miles across the Pacific Ocean, another nation was quietly building its own Eagles. A nation that had once been America's enemy. A nation that transformed itself into one of Washington's closest allies. That nation was Japan. And from that partnership emerged something extraordinary, the F-15J Eagle, Japan's own version of the legendary air-superiority fighter. But here is where the story becomes truly fascinating. Did Japan simply buy the F-15 from the United States? Or did Japan actually build it? How much technology was transferred? How much was manufactured inside Japan? And why would America allow one of its most advanced fighters to be produced overseas? Because during the Cold War, the F-15 was not just another fighter aircraft. It was one of America's most valuable military assets, a symbol of air dominance, a weapon designed to counter the Soviet Union's best aircraft. And not every nation was trusted with such power. Yet somehow, Japan gained access to the Eagle, not only as an operator, but as a producer. And that decision would forever change the balance of air power in East Asia. So, did Japan really build the F-15? Is the F-15J identical to the American Eagle? Or is there far more to the story than most people realize? Today, we uncover the truth, only on Eagle War Machine.
Why did America trust Japan with the Eagle? To understand the story of the F-15J, we must first travel back to the Cold War, a time when the world stood divided between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Across Europe, tensions were rising, but thousands of miles away, another strategic battlefield was emerging, the Pacific Ocean. The Soviet Union was expanding its military presence. Its navy was growing, its bomber fleets were becoming more active, and advanced Soviet aircraft were appearing closer and closer to Japan's airspace. For Washington, this was a serious concern, because Japan was not just another ally. Japan was the front line of America's defense strategy in East Asia. If Japan's air defenses failed, the balance of power in the Pacific could shift dramatically, and that was something the United States could not afford. At the same time, American engineers were developing a revolutionary fighter aircraft, a machine designed with one mission above all others: air superiority. Its name was the F-15 Eagle, a fighter built to dominate the skies, a fighter created specifically to defeat the Soviet Union's best aircraft. The Eagle was not an ordinary export product. It was one of America's most advanced military assets. Its technology was sensitive, its capabilities were extraordinary, and many policymakers believed it should remain exclusively in American hands. This created a difficult question. Should the United States allow another country to operate the Eagle? And if so, which country could truly be trusted? The answer eventually became Japan, because the relationship between Washington and Tokyo had evolved far beyond a normal alliance. The two nations shared strategic interests, shared security concerns, and a common desire to maintain stability in the Pacific. But Japan wanted more than just access to the aircraft. Japanese leaders recognized something important. Buying fighters was one thing, building them was another. And if Japan could learn to manufacture advanced aircraft, it could strengthen its own aerospace industry for decades to come. This idea sparked intense discussions between both governments: technology transfer, production rights, industrial cooperation. Each issue carried enormous strategic significance, because every piece of knowledge transferred to Japan represented a level of trust rarely seen between nations. And yet, the agreement moved forward. The United States would provide the Eagle, and Japan would gain the opportunity to produce it domestically. What followed became one of the most significant military-industrial partnerships in modern aviation history. Factories would be built, engineers would be trained, production lines would be established, and Japan would begin a journey that few nations had ever attempted. But there was one company that would stand at the center of it all, a company that would ultimately help transform Japan into one of the world's leading aerospace powers, a company known as Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating, because Japan was not merely assembling aircraft, it was learning how to build the Eagle itself. In Part 3, we will uncover how Japan began producing the F-15J, how much of the aircraft was actually made in Japan, and why many aviation experts consider the F-15J one of the most important fighter programs in Japanese history.
Japan built the Eagle. When the United States agreed to provide the F-15 to Japan, many observers assumed the process would be simple. America builds the aircraft, Japan buys the aircraft, and the story ends there. But Japan had a much bigger vision, a vision that extended far beyond simply operating the Eagle. Japan wanted knowledge, Japan wanted experience, and most importantly, Japan wanted the ability to build. This ambition led to one of the most significant defense agreements in modern aviation history. Instead of importing every aircraft directly from America, Japan would receive production rights, and the company entrusted with this enormous responsibility was Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, or simply MHI. For Japan, this was far more than a fighter program. It was an opportunity to develop an aerospace industry capable of producing some of the most advanced aircraft in the world. The challenge was enormous. The F-15 was one of the most sophisticated fighters ever built. Every component demanded precision. Every system required strict quality control. Every aircraft had to meet exacting American standards. The first aircraft arrived largely from the United States. Japanese engineers studied every process, every assembly procedure, every manufacturing technique. Piece by piece, they learned how the Eagle was built, and gradually, more work shifted to Japan. Local production increased, Japanese suppliers became involved, factories expanded, engineers gained experience, and over time, the Eagle became less of an imported aircraft and more of a Japanese-built fighter. By the height of production, the majority of F-15Js were being manufactured domestically, a remarkable achievement because very few nations in the world had ever been trusted with this level of aerospace technology. The result was extraordinary. Japan built one of the largest F-15 fleets outside the United States, and unlike many export customers, Japan understood the aircraft from the inside out. This knowledge became invaluable, not only for maintaining the fleet, not only for upgrading it, but for shaping the future of Japanese aerospace engineering. Every Eagle produced created new expertise, new industrial capabilities, and new generations of engineers. In many ways, the F-15J program became a national classroom, teaching Japan how to manufacture high-performance military aircraft on a world-class level. And the lessons learned would later influence programs such as the F-2 and eventually Japan's future fighter projects. But there was another side to the story, because although the F-15J originated from the American Eagle, Japan did not simply freeze the design in time. As decades passed, the aircraft evolved. New electronics, new sensors, new weapons, and new upgrades began to appear. The Eagle was becoming something uniquely Japanese. And that raises an important question. If Japan built the Eagle, did it remain identical to America's F-15C? Or did the F-15J eventually become a different beast altogether? In Part 4, we will compare the F-15J and the American F-15C directly. Radar, weapons, electronics, upgrades, and combat capability to discover whether Japan's Eagle has evolved beyond its original American roots.
F-15J versus F-15C, are they still the same Eagle? At first glance, the two aircraft appear identical. The same twin-engine configuration, the same massive wings, the same unmistakable silhouette, and the same legendary Eagle heritage. Pause. To most observers, the F-15J looks exactly like the American F-15C, but appearances can be deceiving because over the decades, their paths began to diverge. When Japan first introduced the F-15J, its mission was clear: defend Japanese airspace, intercept intruders, and maintain air superiority over the Pacific. The aircraft closely mirrored the American F-15C because at the time, the Eagle already represented the pinnacle of air aviation. Pause. But military technology never stands still. Threats evolve, weapons evolve, and aircraft must evolve with them. Japan understood this reality, so rather than replacing the Eagle, they chose to modernize it. Dramatic music intensifies. New radar systems were introduced, electronic warfare capabilities improved, communication systems became more advanced, and integration with modern command networks increased dramatically. The Eagle was entering a new era, one far removed from the Cold War battlefield it was originally designed for. Pause. Then came the most ambitious upgrade of all, the F-15 JSI program, Japanese Super Interceptor. This was not a simple modernization package, it was a transformation. The aircraft received advanced AESA radar technology, new mission computers, improved electronic warfare systems, enhanced situational awareness, and compatibility with modern weapons. The result was astonishing. An aircraft whose airframe originated in the 1970s, but whose systems belonged to the 21st century. Pause. Meanwhile, the United States was pursuing its own path. Newer Eagles, Strike Eagles, and eventually the F-15EX, America's Eagle family continued to evolve, but Japan focused on something different, building the ultimate interceptor for homeland defense. And this is where the comparison becomes fascinating. The F-15C was designed to dominate global battlefields. The F-15J was optimized to defend Japan. Different missions, different priorities, different strategic realities, which means asking which one is better may actually be the wrong question. Pause. A more important question would be which one is better suited for its mission, because that is where the F-15J truly shines, protecting Japanese airspace, monitoring vast maritime regions, and responding rapidly to aircraft approaching national borders. Dramatic music builds. Even today, decades after its introduction, the Eagle remains one of the most respected fighters in service, and Japan continues to rely on it,
not because it is old, but because it still works, still deters, still dominates, and still protects. Pause. Yet there is one final question. Was the enormous investment worth it? Did Japan producing the Eagle truly pay off? Or would Japan have been better off simply buying aircraft from abroad? And perhaps more importantly, what legacy did the F-15J leave behind? Because its influence extends far beyond the aircraft itself. In Part 5, we will deliver the final verdict. Was the F-15J one of Japan's greatest military successes? And we will reveal why an aircraft older than many of its pilots continues to shape military aviation today, before opening the door to our next mission, one of the most mysterious aircraft ever built, the B-2 Spirit, a bomber so advanced that despite decades of service, America still refuses to let it go.
The final verdict. At the beginning of this documentary, we asked a simple question. Did Japan really build the F-15? Now, after exploring decades of history, the answer is clear. Yes, Japan truly built the Eagle. Not alone, not entirely from scratch, but through one of the most significant aerospace partnerships in modern history. The F-15J was born from American technology, yet it was manufactured, maintained, upgraded, and perfected by Japanese hands. What started as a fighter acquisition program became something much larger, a national investment in knowledge, engineering, industry, and technological independence. Every Eagle produced inside Japan strengthened the country's aerospace capabilities. Every production line created expertise. Every upgrade created experience. And perhaps that is the greatest achievement of the F-15J program. Not simply the aircraft itself, but what the aircraft taught Japan. Because the lessons learned from the Eagle would later influence the F-2 and eventually contribute to future fighter programs. For decades, the F-15J stood watch over Japan, intercepting intruders, guarding the nation's skies, and serving as one of the most capable air superiority fighters in Asia. While many aircraft disappeared from service, the Eagle remained, because it continued to evolve, continued to improve, and continued to prove its value. Today, the F-15J remains one of the most important pillars of Japanese air defense, a remarkable achievement for an aircraft whose origins trace back to the Cold War. And even as stealth fighters enter service, the Eagle still flies, still protects, still dominates. So, was the program worth it? If success is measured by exports, perhaps not. If success is measured by industrial growth, technological advancement, and decades of operational effectiveness, then the answer is unquestionably yes. The F-15J became more than a fighter. It became a symbol of how Japan transformed from a nation rebuilding after war into one of the world's leading aerospace powers. But every legend eventually faces a new generation. And while the Eagle still rules the skies, another question continues to puzzle military analysts around the world. A question involving an aircraft even older than many modern fighters, yet somehow still among the most feared weapons on Earth. The B-2 Spirit, the stealth bomber that first flew decades ago, the aircraft that can cross continents undetected, the aircraft that many believed would have been retired by now. And yet, it remains in service, ready for missions, ready for war, ready for the future. But why? Why would the United States continue operating an aircraft designed during the Cold War? Why has America not retired the B-2? And what secret capabilities make it so valuable even today? In our next documentary, Air Warfare, Eagle, will investigate one of the greatest mysteries in modern military aviation, an aircraft so advanced that even after more than 30 decades, the world still struggles to replace it.
Why has the B-2 Spirit not been retired? And why does the Pentagon still consider it indispensable? The answer may change the way you see air power forever. Mission continues.